Hello and welcome to the ProCycle YouTube channel. I'm Tom, and in this video I'll be going over the steps to replace a worn out clutch pack on a TW200. This should be the same process no matter what year TW200 you have. Some common symptoms you'll experience with a bad clutch, most notably, is when you grab a handful of throttle and the bike revs more than it pulls you forward. Next could be a chattering or clunking kind of sound when you go into gear, or not being able to get it in gear at all. Another issue could be that you just can't seem to get your clutch lever adjusted no matter what you do. No matter the case, we're here to help you get going again. Let's start by draining the oil. Next, clean the right hand side of your engine where the clutch cover meets the case half. We don't want any dirt or debris getting into the engine when we have the cover off. Now go ahead and remove your oil filter cover and oil filter. You'll need a 6mm hex key and a 8mm socket. Remember where each bolt went because they are all different sizes. Next, remove the case cover bolts with an 8mm socket. There should be 10 in total, not counting the oil filter cover. Maybe. As you can see, I tried to get that lower case bolt out, but I just couldn't. So go ahead and remove the right foot peg with the 8mm Allen key, and go ahead and wiggle that brake pedal off so you have better access to all those lower case bolts. Now if you look right here, you'll see a little ear or tab. This is so that you can reach from the opposite side of the engine and kind of apply some force there. There's 3 of these locations to help you kind of pop the case off. Next, let's remove any gasket material on the clutch cover. Then we'll go back to the bike and remove the clutch springs and bolts holding the clutch pack in place. Now to remove the pressure plate, you can pry it straight off, but there are some smaller components inside that you need to be mindful of that may fall down. I chose to remove the adjustment nut with a 10mm wrench. If you remove this nut, you will need to adjust it after reassembly. It's always a good idea to write repairs down in a notebook, and on repairs like this, I like to measure the clutch and friction plate thicknesses in 3 different spots, and then note the average thickness of the steel and friction plates. There is a minimum thickness per Yamaha of 2.8mm and an operational limit of 2.9mm to 3.1mm for the friction plate. You can also measure the clutch springs free length, as they have a minimum length of 35.3mm. Be sure to also check the clutch housing dogs for cracks and pittings on the edges. If they appear minor, you can just deburr them. If they're really bad, you'll need to replace the housing. Also inspect the clutch boss splines for pitting. Again, if it's minor, you can deburr them. Otherwise, it too will need to be replaced. If these aren't smooth, you may experience erratic clutch behavior, things like sticking and such. Now we can install our new clutch pack. Start with a friction plate and then add a steel plate, then a friction plate, alternating the plates until you have no more left to install. Most clutch kits will require you to soak the friction plates in some new motor oil for at least a few hours before installation, while some may be ready to go right out of the packaging. This is why it's a good idea to read the instructions with your kit. Next, install your pressure plate and new clutch springs if you got them with your kit. Snug these clutch spring bolts up in a crisscross pattern and then torque them down to 50.4 inch-pounds in that same crisscross pattern. Now we need to adjust the number 1 push rod with a flathead screwdriver. Turning this will pivot the push lever on the other side of the bike. The push arm has a point on one end that faces towards the right hand side of the bike, and just below it is a line in the case. You want to align these to each other. I applied some white paint to ours to help you see it better in the photos. Once adjusted, put the lock nut and washer back on and torque down to 69.6 inch-pounds. Now we can do a final cleaning of the mating surfaces with some rubbing alcohol and install our side cover with a new gasket. Be sure to have the 2 dowel pins installed, as it will help keep the gasket in place.
What? Dude, I don't know, man. I don't know about that. That feels excessively tight.
With the torque wrench not functioning at the lower torque specs of 5.1 foot-pounds, I decided to proceed by tightening them by hand. You can do this by hand if you feel you can mimic the tension felt in your hand and wrist when tightening each bolt. How do you know what 5.1 foot-pounds feels like, you may ask? Well, go tighten a bolt on the other case cover until it just barely begins to move. Now you know what to expect. This is an aluminum case that these bolts are going into, so don't bear down on it. The gasket will do its job just fine without a torque wrench. Now, I will note that there is a sequence at which these bolts need to be tightened in. If you follow the numbers in this image, you'll be set. Lastly, install your oil filter and cover. These bolts use the same 5.1 foot-pound torque specs as the side covers. Now we're on the home stretch. Install your brake pedal, apply some grease to the pivot point if needed, make sure the brake pedal tension spring is attached to the swing arm, and connect the brake switch rod to the pedal before installing the foot peg. Install your foot peg and apply blue thread locker as needed and tighten to 43 foot-pounds. Last thing to do is add motor oil to the engine and make your final clutch lever adjustments. Clutch lever free play should be about 2 to 3 millimeters. Then go enjoy.
So we're doing this backwards.
Right?
Yeah. I'm just digging.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Right before I came off the lip, the tire just started.
Oh, exactly. I tried to turn and I was just like, ah. Alright.
So up this way?
Yep.
see that?
Flashing. Ooh. What the fuck?
But then it jumps to 13.6.
Weird. That's kind of worrisome.
I mean, it's running fine, but
yeah. But you can see it dim down. See, we almost see it right there. Oh, good, yeah.
yeah.